Good day, everyone. My name is Navneet Anand from Voice Ajkal, local and global. New South Wales has come out of lockdown because of 90% plus vaccination has been done. There has been number of cases that were going in the court as well, but the courts were closed. So most of the solicitors, lawyers were working online from their office. We thought, why not we invite one of the popular and has been there for over 30 years in the industry, Mr. Harish Prasad. Harishji, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here again, Navneet.
You know, I love it every time I sit next to you because of the positivity and vibes that I get.
Oh, I wish everyone said that to me.
There was a lockdown. There must have been pressure on the office staff as well because with the number of cases probably being delayed for one reason or the other.
Yes, I think we all got used to it. I think every industry had to cope. The funny thing now is that a lot of the changes that came are here to stay. So more and more people are now working from home and learning to do the work perhaps better than when they were working out of an office.
It's good or bad, both.
I think so. I think it's both. In some cases, people now prefer to stay at home and buy a retreat in the Central Coast and work from there. So I don't know how good that is for an employer, but that's going to happen now.
I think the human touch has to be there in any case.
Absolutely, especially in our business, our sort of work. I can't see how we can continue speaking to a person on Zoom or video and try and work out what really is happening. You know, that human contact is so important for us to really understand what a person's about or what their problems are.
Well, sometimes when you're talking to face, they have more confidence in telling you the facts, which even are the smaller ones, but for you, it may be a real handy and useful in the court.
Absolutely, especially when you've been doing this for a while, when you sit and interview a client, you really have a feel about what's the truth or what he's really trying to say to you, which you don't get on camera.
The areas that you cover, I think, you do the conveyancing, you do the business law, you do family law, you do immigration, you represent cases with the AAT, but family law probably seems to be on top of your list.
Yes, well, firstly, I don't do all of it myself. Fortunately, I've got a couple of other lawyers, so the work is spread around. But personally, one of my shouldn't say favorite, but big areas is family law.
Well, it does not need only the knowledge, the know-how of the regulations. At the same time, it needs a lot of empathy, sympathy, compassion, and all those things to be taken care of as well.
Absolutely. I think there's no substitute for experience, as they say. And over the years that I've been doing it, we can very quickly work out what the real issues are and try and concentrate on those aspects of it rather than, being a bit vague about what you're going to achieve for your client.
Well, I remember we talking about domestic violence in our last conversation that happened probably just before the lockdown. But in the family law, it is not only domestic violence. I think there is much more to it. Divorce, children, property disputes.
Yes, in Australia, when we talk about family law, basically we're talking about divorce, parenting issues or children issues, and property, three issues. Unlike India, in Australia, divorce is a standalone application, meaning that nothing else really attaches to a divorce application. It's very simple. If people are separated for at least 12 months, you get a divorce. So you don't come to a divorce court and argue about children and parenting. Those are all dealt with separately.
What I could see 25 years ago versus today, the number of cases have gone up. So probably it is the patience level has gone down in the couples at the moment, or probably they have progressed too much in their life as a career-wise, or some other issues. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's probably true. I'm not a sociologist, so I can't tell you why it's probably gone up. But I think people are more sophisticated now, and for that reason, people are able to resort to legal remedies, which are more accessible, of course, this day and age than they were years ago. So I think that's one explanation as to why there's a lot more of this happening.
Well, probably you coming from the Indian ethnic background from Fiji, so you have that understanding of the family, the cultures that we have within the families back in India as well. So
Yes.
do you get many cases from the Indian background people?
The majority of them, because I work in the community. So look, it's a bit of a sad fact that there is so much of it in Australia. I think I'm probably safe to say that we are overrepresented in the courts when it comes to property and children issues. Now, marriage breakdowns happen for a number of reasons, but I've spoken about this before. I think in our culture, because so much of it is still arranged marriages, there is still a higher risk of marriages not working out. Perhaps that's one of the reasons why you see more younger people getting separated very, very soon, within a couple of years of their marriage.
You know, or probably what I think is it could be the other way around as well. A lot of people now go and get married after having a relationship for a couple of years and all that, but that period that they were going through before marriage, they may not be living together, or probably they are trying to have a goody-goody structure all around, but once they get married and come to the reality grounds, at times that also affects.
Well, I'm sure that tests everyone once you start living together. But look, again, I feel that maybe some of it has to do with these arranged marriages and complexities of living in extended families. I think that's another thing that comes through the cases I do. Unfortunately, when we're dealing with people of our community, it's not just the couple that are involved. You find that the extended family always are part of the dispute that's going on, which is unlike what happens in the Western culture.
Right. Sometimes having an extended family is a big support, but at the same time, at times there are people, probably they're being more influenced by their extended families at times, rather than preferring to the relationship that they're in.
Yes, I think you're right. I think that's probably one of the reasons. Quite often, the extended family can be seen as perhaps a cause of the separation, which again doesn't happen much in a Western culture, if you know what I mean.
I think dowry seems to be like the thing of the past, but do you still get any of the cases related to dowry?
Well, I'm surprised the number of cases that I deal with in Australia that has some sort of parallel litigation going on in India, and most of it seem to have to do with something to do with the dowry laws.
So what you're saying is the couple living in Australia from the Indian background, but the cases is still lodged back in India.
Yes, and in fact, it seems to be very common, and I've never practiced in India, and I don't know much about the Indian laws, but it doesn't cease to surprise me the number of cases I'm dealing with where, one or the other party says, but yes, we've also, instituted proceedings in India. And to me, it doesn't make sense why, when the parties were both living in Australia, why there has to be a case in India as well. So again, I've read enough now to know that quite often it's some sort of a strategy. Sometimes these laws in India, what we call dowry laws, are somewhat being abused. I think people use that to their advantage to try and put pressure, in most cases, of course, against the man and his family. And that allows a bit of leverage if there's a parallel proceeding also in Australia.
The couple living in Australia, the dispute happened in Australia. It may be with the interference of family or maybe without interference of any other factors that I don't want to go into. But the case has been lodged back in India for dowry on the man's. As you said, sometimes it gets abused. But the question is, what do people gain out of it?
Oh, money most of the time, and revenge.
Okay.
You find that a lot of these laws are, used. Marriages don't work out for a number of reasons, and quite often one or the other party feels aggrieved, and they somehow think that by using these dowry laws they can get back at the other family, So it's a terrible word to use, but I think it is used as a kind of a revenge in a lot of these cases.
So it's greed, ego, revenge, a combination of
Yes.
all or any of these.
All of those. And fortunately, in Australia, we don't have any similar laws. In Australia, our family law cases, when it comes to dealing with property and issues, don't have these issues of faults intertwined with it. In India, you sort of, you have these issues of demand for dowries or abusive, relationship. Of course, that happens in Australia as well. But in Australia, it's much more straightforward. You courts simply look at things factually, where the parties were at the time of the commencement of the
Use the
marriage.
mediator to see if things can be sorted.
Oh yes, that's big in our system now. In fact, in Australia, you can't even go to court unless you prove that you've attempted to
mediation.
mediate and settle out of court. So without a certificate, you cannot even go to court in most cases.
So these cases in India, do they affect any proceedings here?
They can. Look, it's. I've noticed it's a bit of a frustration for courts here when people come into the court in Australia and say, we've got proceedings in India or their property in India, because like me, the judiciary here do not know Indian laws. So it becomes a very difficult thing. In a lot of cases, the judges will say to the parties that, look, we want the two parties to get an agreement as to what laws apply as far as India is concerned or other countries. But it does get a bit complicated.
For example, as we talked about, the dowry case has been lodged against the man in India. The girl either stays here or go back, whether she's a permanent resident or is an Indian national, irrespective of the fact. If the man wants to proceed with his life and gets remarried, what happens to that sponsorship application that he tries to do for the wife that he's trying to get in at the moment?
For the second
Yeah.
one? Well, firstly, the laws in Australia when it comes to sponsorship is there has to be a 5-year period between sponsorships, and I think you can only sponsor 2 people.
I think it's a
from the-
5-year period from the date of first application
Yes.
towards the grant of the second visa
Yes.
application.
But it's interesting point you've raised. Now, I've come across instances where people who had ignored proceedings in India and had some orders made against them, normally men.
So warrants have been issued, or
Yeah, oh, that's right, a warrant.
he's been there as an
and
absconding
some-
man in the country.
Exactly. That can have an impact now on sponsorship. So I've had at least 1 or 2 cases where, when this is discovered through Interpol or whatever, the person has greater difficulty sponsoring a second spouse.
So how do you resolve these sort of situations?
Oh, look, I think the laws are quite sensible in a way. I mean, if you have a good enough explanation as to how it all happened. I mean, the test, of course, in Australia is more one of character. It's not so much about whether there is a conviction of some sort against you. So if you can still prove that you're a person of good character, I think in most of these cases you get through.
This is one. The second is sometimes the relationship don't work out and there is a child involved. There's a couple who is a permanent resident to Australia or an Australian citizen, but for one reason, one of the parent decides to go back to India and the child is with him or her, whatever the case may be. Does that impact any of the application for the divorce?
Well, divorce is very straightforward. So even if a child has been taken to another jurisdiction, generally that will not stop the divorce from going through,
But
because
the child custody could be another
that is a
application.
separate application. Yeah. The courts only need to know on a divorce application what the state of play is with the children. So the declarations that are made on a divorce. So in one instance, the court can say that they believe that proper arrangements have been made for the welfare of the child. In some cases, they can make a declaration that they're not satisfied, but the divorce still goes through.
Any of the case study that you want to discuss that happened within the Indian background community?
Oh, there are a lot of cases, and that's why I think we're talking about it. It doesn't cease to surprise me the number of cases where there is that parallel case in India, and I think we need to have a lot of, perhaps a word of advice to in most cases men, that they need to think about these things a bit more. And fortunately in Australia you can have some sort of a prenuptial or pre-marriage agreements and things like that done. I don't know whether that's possible in India, but from what I've seen people going through with proceedings in India, I would strongly recommend that people look into these types of things so that they don't find themselves in this strife. I mean, everyone gets married for the purpose of being married for the long term. Why else would you do it? But reality is that for one reason or another, marriages don't work out, and there's no need then for parties to be involved in this lengthy litigation in another country. A lot of cases where both parties are living in Australia. So this is, I think this is going to be a huge problem even in the future for people getting married.
On behalf of the whole team of Voice Ajkal Fiji Times, and I take the privilege by saying from Harish Prasad and Associate as well, we wish each and everybody of you to have a wonderful family life, that you don't need these services from any of the solicitors and lawyers. But it's not a perfect world and things do happen in life. If there's any advice that you want to seek, go to somebody who has got the expertise and experience with some sort of compassion to understand the whole case and then give you the resolutions out of it. I do recommend Harish Prasad and Associate. Having known him for over 25 years, I have not heard any of the negativity that has come out from your company. Salute to this sort of team. I still say have a wonderful family life, but if you ever need some sort of consultation, feel free to call Harish Prasad and Associates. Harish ji, on this note, thank you so much.
Thank you, Navneet.
जी हाँ, आज हमने की हरीश प्रसाद से बातचीत और मैं आपका नवनीत. Thank you.
Fiji Times. We with the Times. One-stop answer to your Australian education and visa matters. Gemco Sydney. Dream big, achieve big.